Some foreign embassies in Nigeria have warned their citizens of an elevated risk of terror attacks in Nigeria, specifically in Abuja. It was unclear if the assessment from the US, the United Kingdom, and other countries was based on a new threat or because of incidents that had already occurred. In response, Nigeria's Department of State Services advised that necessary precautions be taken by all. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, also ordered the increase of security activities in the Federal Capital Territory as part of new efforts to secure the nation's capital and contain threats of any nature. The federal government, while reacting to the news, lashed out at the foreign embassies for allegedly issuing an unverified terror warning on the Federal Capital Territory, posting clickbait and causing panic in the country. Joining us on this show this morning as we discuss the security concern raised by the foreign embassies in Nigeria is Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Nigeria's former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Good morning, Prof, and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Mr. Hussaini.
Morning, sir. Good to see you again, sir. Bless you, sir.
Well, Prof.
Thank you.
The U.S. Embassy, the UK mission to Nigeria both issued these terror alerts. The U.S. have even asked some of their non-essential staff to leave the country. But the Nigeria's Minister of Information says, look, this is scaremongering, causing panic. It's unverified news. And why would the U.S. be raising unnecessary alarm? After all, people get killed in the U.S. too. And what is the guarantee that Nigerians in the U.S. feel safe? When, in his view, he says that Nigeria cannot be safer than it is now. What do you say to that?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. This is worrisome times in Nigeria, and we should deconstruct the roles of every actor in this game. Number one, the security threat that had now been made public is the number is increasing every day. The United States started it, then the United Kingdom, India joined, Australia has joined, Canada has joined, and I suspect that the number is going to be increasing. Now, why would they do this? Let's have a little historical background. You will recall that in the attack on the American consulate in Libya by some non-actors, the American ambassador to Libya was killed. The consulate was ransacked. The Secretary of State of the United States at that time was Hillary Clinton. It became a political issue in the United States. She was roasted that the embassy did not take the threat assessment seriously, that it risked and forfeited the lives of Americans. From that time on, one no-American ambassador at post is going to ignore information, intelligence that he or she has. Number two, please don't forget that intelligence that is available to embassies in Abuja are not collated from just the information gathered within Abuja or within Nigeria. This information could have been picked up in any of the listening posts of the United States anywhere in the world. It could have been in Turkey, it could have been in Afghanistan, it could have been in Syria, it could have been anywhere the United States was listening in on communication. We Nigerians don't have that intelligence capability. Therefore, don't let us demonize the Americans or any of the embassies that are involved in this. Thirdly, the American responsibility is to its citizens. one American citizen getting killed in any of the things that they suspect may happen is going to bring the wrath of Congress on the American ambassador here. So their role is to look after their own citizens. So let us understand that. Number two, I've listened to the statement, and you've repeated it in your intro, of the Nigerian Minister of Information. His own job also is to calm things down in this country and to deflect the panic effect that this information coming in from abroad may cause. So each one is performing its own role. Even for Arise Television and even for me, we've got to balance informing, analyzing, and risk the possibility of being criticized for increasing the panic level in the country because we are dealing with the matter. Each one of us is performing its own role. Now, these are bad times, or these are inconvenient times for Nigeria. Why do I say so? Election time, campaign time has started. All this 1 million man march, 5 million man march, 2 million man, that we see all over the countries, those are soft targets for terrorists. And we know, the Americans don't need to tell us, we've been having these terrorist attacks all over the past 1 year. I don't need to repeat them. You know as well as I do where these terrorists have hit. In fact, not in the past 1 year, because I would say, let us say, go back to the... I'm so sorry. Go back to the time of Jonathan, where there's the Boko Haram attacks, even on the United Nations building in Abuja. And Dr. Abati, you were in government at that time. And I have served on what we call the Boko Haram Committee, where we've gone round this country, and villagers had told us that at night they had seen helicopters landing, dropping weapons, dropping supplies for these miscreants, or whatever you may wish to call them. The villagers had no reason to lie that they saw helicopters if those helicopters were not available. So we have had this external involvement in what is happening in this country. And after Gaddafi was killed and assassinated in Libya, these forces moved into the Sahel, which is, I mean, if you had a choice of setting up camps in the Sahel and setting up camps in Nigeria, you will pick to set up camps in Nigeria where food, water supplies were available, or wherever those external forces behind these people ask them to move into. One of the things we haven't taken seriously is the fact that there are external forces behind these people. I found that out in the committee on which I served. Only 2 weeks ago, I was watching a program where Major Hamza, the former CSO to Abacha, was being asked, and he said they know, even in their own time, that external forces were behind these people. So, what these terrorists are doing in Nigeria and will be doing is not even dependent on what we are doing. Their organizers are also external to us, and there are different narratives. I don't think we have enough time for me to go into the narratives as to why Nigeria had been targeted by the ISS, Boko Haram, and also these external forces. The external forces I'm talking about are superpowers. I'm not talking about some little country somewhere. You just look at the map of Africa. Why are all the big powers now having military bases? Whether in Djibouti, whether in Central African Republic, whether in Mali, even what is happening in Burkina Faso. Why would they have military forces there? And those that don't have military forces have troops on the ground. There are troops on the ground, foreign troops on the ground in Niger Republic, which is just sitting on top of Nigeria. You now ask yourself, why all of a sudden these military strategic interests in Africa, and Nigeria is not regarded as a passive country in Africa, is being regarded as a target by all these superpowers who, without asking us, want to rescue Nigeria from not coming under the control of any of them. These are what is behind all this that are going on. Why I say this is an unfortunate time for Nigeria is because of the campaign season that had come on, because it means we are wide open. And what I will expect to happen now is for the president to come back from South Korea, if he's not already back. Don't go anywhere, because he's got flood problems on his hand. He's got the evacuation of foreign personnel from his country, which has raised what I will call the threat target of Nigeria. He should order the National Security Advisor, because this is no longer a question of military versus military. He should call the National Security Advisor after assessment to call the political parties and not advise, direct all of them to stop this million whatever matches that can be easily attacked. That's number one. Number two, and I don't expect us to be told this, but over the past 2 years, those of us who monitor these things, the press has been very educative in terms of letting us know where people have set up camps all over Nigeria, not just in the north, all over Nigeria. These camps are there. I would like to see more helicopter activities all over Nigeria, so that the cells will know that they are being monitored. You are reassuring Nigerians that the security forces are in control. Recall when the primate of the Methodist Church was abducted in the southeast. When he came out, he told us what those people told him, that all these cells are already in situ. They're already in place, waiting to be activated by communication from their commanders. Now, probably the most dangerous weapon in the hands of everybody is this iPhone, because this is in the hand of probably every cell commander in the country. So he can get the message from his own operational commander to attack whatever their targets are. So let us have this visible presence of action by the security men. I don't want to put myself in the position of talking about the exercise of security agencies, because the attitude, our attitude in Nigeria, and all of us are guilty of this: don't teach me my job. As if they are the journalists will tell you, don't teach me my job. I've been doing this. Probably the Mama Put will tell you also, don't teach me how to do that. So the military, the police, the security forces have this attitude, a defensive attitude. Don't teach me my job. But we are educated people. All of us read about what is going on in other countries. When I listened to your program yesterday with the Major General and the other gentleman, I feel I should praise Irabo, the present CDS, because of interagency approach to security. But it's got to go beyond that, all the way down to the local government level. The knee-jerk reaction by the federal government over arming of security forces must stop. In Benue, I don't know what they call them, the state security, whatever it is. In the southwest, Amotekun. In the north, is this joint civilian, whatever it is, that works along with the military, must be armed. There are not enough arms in the hands of the Nigerian army or the Nigerian police to cope with what they're about to confront, what the Americans and the British and what have you are insinuating in Nigeria. So the knee-jerk reaction of weapons must only be in the hands of the federal forces. Are those weapons enough? I mean, let us even start with the number. I served in the Always Committee, and we submitted a report that pointed out that given our population, the United Nations said we need, I think at that time it was 1.2 million policemen. We had at that time only 350,000 policemen. I'm not going to get into how they are dispersed and who does what. And every year, where we've allowed 10,000 more to be recruited. You want to go from 350,000 to 1.2 or 1.5 million, and you are saying hallelujah when they allow you to increase by 10,000 a year. When the military was going into civil war, they knew what they did. Massive recruitment into the armed forces. Yes, I mean, there were mistakes, which you then weed out, as you are going along. I haven't seen any sense of urgency in the recruitment into the Nigerian police.
Okay, sir. I mean, I know there's a lot to say as regards this, but I'd like to ask you, what's your reaction to the double speak that we are now having? When this report came out, the first thing the DSS did and the police did was to start up drills as a show to reassure confidence. But what is happening now is that the Minister of Information has said that we should not believe the Americans. That even if they said anything like that, it's for their own citizens. So who should we believe? The police that is doing drills, or the Minister of Information?
I will believe the police and I will believe the Americans. I have said it somewhere earlier in my presentation that the Americans have information from all over the world. And those who follow this system know that at times information about what is going to happen in Nigeria could have been picked up in Afghanistan, could have been picked up in Syria, could have been picked up anywhere. Maybe one of the people say, oh, I'm going on a trip to the Sahel. We're about to launch operations in Nigeria. That could have been picked up anywhere in the world, not necessarily in Nigeria. I will believe the Americans, and I will believe the Nigerian police, who also know how to, they're experts, how to do assessment of reaction to intelligence covered. And that's also why I said I would like to see helicopter movements all over to show the terrorist cells that they are being monitored, and to assure Nigerians that they are up to the task. But I am saying also, let this be a warning signal. We've missed so many warning signals. When I said I served on the Waste Committee, I'm talking about 20... I don't know. This was when Yaradua came into power, when he set up that committee. And that was when we called the attention of the government to what needs to be done. That report was ignored. I don't see any massive recruitment. Massive, I'm not talking about, token recruitment. I'd like to see massive recruitment into the Nigerian police. I'd like to see, I welcome the setting up of different divisions. There's been an increase in the number of divisions, but I'm not into that area of equipping the division, so I don't know. But I know that it's a wrong decision, which is driven by this power struggle over who rules Nigeria, to refuse to arm the JTF, refuse to arm state security forces, refused to arm Amotekun, and kept saying no AK-47 is just for the police. Even the Nigerian police don't have enough AK-47. At times, when you read what happens in the southeast, and the DPO says, when these people came, I had only 10 guns. And they had, the people who attacked us had more than 10 guns. Excuse me. Then what do you say? That the police is well armed? Not to now talk about align the state governors who are prepared to pay for importation of arms for Amotekun, for state police. Those are the things we need to do.
Well, Prof, I thought I heard you saying that this political rally is 1 million man march, 2 million man march, constitute soft targets for terrorists. Well, nobody can argue with that. But the politicians, the political parties have said the police and the other security agencies should do their work, that they are not going to stop their campaigns or their rallies, because it will amount to an infringement on their rights of assembly, of association, of expression. After all, it's political season.
Dr. Abati, we should stop talking about rights when there is an existential danger to the republic. And that's why I said the National Security Advisor should, after clearance with the president, who should be back on seat, should be directed to call in the politicians and read the Riot Act to them. I'm not interested in your right to assembly if you are presenting soft targets. The Americans have warned you about what's about to happen, and you are insisting it is your right to have million man matches and so on. It's no longer, it's a question of balancing rights with responsibilities. You don't have enough policemen to provide you protection. Because if anything happens, the next thing they are going to say is the police did not protect us. But there are not enough. Don't create situations that even now, stresses beyond all reasonable possibility the ability of the security forces to cope. So help the security forces to focus on the immediate threat to the nation.
But sir, wouldn't that be just effectively shutting down the campaign rallies? Because the thrust of this politicians' campaign is the fact that they have big rallies, they have planned some of them, and this million-man march, take for instance the one held by the Obedient Movement in Lagos, the one held by the APC candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I mean, this is their power base, and these are the things they do to be able to put their message out there. So effectively, does it mean that we are cowering things down? And some people say psychologically, it means that the other people that want to attack us, the terrorists and the bandits, they'll be winning. So is it not for us to bolster security?
Yes.
And do what is right?
You are right, Mr. Oseni, but we have to pay a price. These are difficult times for us. We have to pay a price for the presence, some of it due to government policies, of terrorists within our country. These are difficult times calling for difficult decisions. If you ban the million-man rallies and so on, fortunately, we have had in the past 10 years in this country a multiplication of radio stations, of television stations. Switch the tactics around. Start addressing the people through TV adverts, TV addresses, radio adverts, radio addresses. Change your strategy to confront the threats you are faced with. I am prepared to give up some of my freedom if it is going to make me safe. But the fact that you want to do things as usual when we are in an unusual situation doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, you go through a few Supreme Court judgments in the United States, which defines when you can even limit freedom. You cannot shout fire in a crowded cinema. You cannot. So how do you now say we can continue to have rallies here because it will be an infringement of my freedom as a gubernatorial candidate when lives are going to be at risk? You have been forewarned. These are dangerous times for country, dangerous times for Nigeria. It's going to be hard times for us. Let us repackage our security strategy and our political strategy accordingly. But the government itself must stop this demonizing of anybody who brings uncomfortable facts to their attention. The embassies are doing their job to their people. Our own government agencies and spokespeople, yes, their role is to calm down and try to reassure us, but not at the risk of asking us to go to sleep when there is about to be fire in the roof.
Well, Prof, still on foreign relations, since we're talking about embassies, the federal government is planning to prune down the number of foreign embassies run by Nigeria. What are your thoughts on that?
Old solutions which never worked. Nigerians and Nigerian governments have to make up their mind. Do they want to be an activist player in global politics, or do they want to be a passive player which have consequences? You see, you want to be a member, a permanent member, either with or without veto in the United Nations Security Council. I have been saying for the past 2 years, even before COVID-19 came on, that we are transiting from an old world order to which we will control by the Americans, to a new one which is multipolar in nature, probably hanging around China, in addition to Russia, India, the people from what had been called BRICS. Although since the war between Russia and Ukraine, organizations have been multiplying. And what seems to me to be happening is that countries are positioning themselves so that at the table where you are going to design the new world order, they will be players. They are not going to have the United Kingdom representing them as, say, the Commonwealth, they are going to be there on their own rights and on their own merits. If you start cutting down the number of your embassies, diplomacy is an act of negotiation, of showing a presence where those presence matter. Nigeria is not an inconsequential country in the world. You can make yourself an inconsequential country if you want, but there are consequences. There are prices to be paid for that. If you are going to campaign to be a member of the Security Council of the United Nations, when the votes take place in the General Assembly, Bhutan has one vote, just as the United States has one vote. Do you think just because you have an embassy in the United States, but you've closed down your embassy in Bhutan, the United States will pick up the phone and speak to the king of Bhutan, please vote for Nigeria? It never makes sense. Closing down missions.
But Prof,
because you're going to reopen them. But by that time, it may be too late. And please don't tell me we don't have the resources. Yeah. When you allow people to steal 500,000 barrels of your crude, when you have senators who are the highest paid in the world, and you have the, what is it? Is it Auditor General or Accountant General who's just emptied your treasury? And I'm just referring to the ones that have been brought to our notice. There are others. So if you can just structure your system that there's only 10% leakage, even 15%, I'll be happy. But when the leakages are 90% or more, and then you say, then who do you now penalize? Ambassadors, embassies that are not even funding enough. We are a laughing stock in the world. Let us be serious. It pains me as a scholar in this field when I see other countries batting above their scale and we are batting below our capability. It makes me sad that this is not the diplomacy of Murtala Mohammed. This is not even the diplomacy of General Yakubu Gowon. So what are we doing? We are going backwards. We are not going forward. So I don't agree with even say, I've looked at the membership of this committee. Civil servants. Civil servants who what we should have been doing, and which some of us have been advocating.
I was saying, Prof, that one or two of them are scholars. There's a professor of history on that committee.
I've looked. Yes, they will always have one or two thrown in. But 90% of membership of those are civil servants, representing head of service, representing this, representing that. We have argued, and we got it approved at the 2014 National Conference, that in fact, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be a separate foreign service. We are always talking about best international practices. This is what happens in the rest of the world. But when it gets to Nigeria, oh no, the Home Ministry is so jealous of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs because they say, oh, you are paid in dollars, you are called Your Excellencies, we are not called Your Excellency, and therefore we will put you under us. We've been praying for the ministry to be made a foreign service. Then you will understand what there are African countries whose financial allocation, Senegal is one of them, to their own foreign service is more than what we do. And yet we say we want to compete, even with other African countries on the world scene, but we don't want to give them the capability. Instead, we want to again tie one hand behind them. Abiola says you cannot clap with one hand. where we are trying to perform miracles in this country. And that's what has got us into where we are.
Okay. I mean, very well said. Prof, you were quite very savage on them this morning, but it's fine. I want to also go to another very pertinent issue. This too close to comfort Russia is doing on the African continent, vis-a-vis the insecurity situation, emboldening of jihadists, and an offshoot that is happening in Nigeria with this security alerts. I know it's a tedious link, but I'd like you to help us link it. Because this part of the Sahara is beginning to bleed, and the dynamics are changing. We saw what's happening in some Francophone countries, Mali and thereabouts, the expulsion of France, dominance of Russia, emboldening of jihadists, a lot more weapons in circulation, and these security alerts now coming out from the Americans. Prof?
Well, take your mind back to a little clip we saw on Burkina Faso when one of the soldiers was interviewed as to what had led to this new coup. And he said, they sent us out with 5, sachets of weapons. After maybe 2 hours of battle with the jihadists, we run out of weapons. The jihadists still have a lot of weapons and they overpower us. Now, France has been there for 60 years. Why did it never come up with a plan to make sure that the Burkinabe troops were better armed with weapons? Why? It means France was there for its own purpose. I had 2 best friends who were heads of state, although it was a breach of protocol because I was just a flipping foreign minister. But Thomas Sankara and Jerry Rallies. And they shared confidences with me because they were expecting that Nigeria will play up to its role. We didn't play up to our role. France finally, using Campore, got rid and assassinated Thomas Sankara. So, the French, what those people get, the conclusion that the security forces in Mali, in the Central African Republic, and now in Burkina Faso have come to a conclusion that actually the French are a threat to their own survival because the French are there for their own purpose. Let me remind you of Macron when he made the mistake of attacking the Italians because they have just voted in a right-wing prime minister. And she gave it back to Macron that these are the things which you, the French, have been doing in West Africa. You've got children mining uranium to provide electricity in France when 90% of the people of Niger had no electricity. There were a few other things that she said. And I said, thank God, thank you, madam. Because if we say nobody believes us, but she now had access to intelligence reports of Italy, and she was now exposing what the French were doing in Africa. So if those people now came to a conclusion that, look, the only people they think still has free, clean hands and clean interests are the Russians, let us call them in. Well, Kennedy used to say that the only way to dismount from the back of a tiger is to end up inside the tiger. I don't know whether that will help, but it's letting the West know that there are alternatives to this security agreement. The West is not going to allow that to happen without a price being paid by these young boys. And I hope, and I know that part of it is the United States is, especially because the United States is aggrieved by what is going on in Ukraine now. They are going to use state and non-state actors to try to overthrow these boys so they can bring in another set that will be more attuned to Western interests. So the question you have raised is that these, to quote Chinese times, are going to be, to quote Chinese phrases, are going to be interesting times in the Sahel and in West Africa. We, Nigeria, that is the most powerful country in West Africa. We have to wake up to our own responsibilities. We haven't done that in the past 18 years. We've had, presidents who have been so concerned about their own pockets, about their own over-bloated role in global affairs, that they have forgotten to build up their countries. You've had presidents who are not interested in foreign affairs at all, and you've had presidents whose definition of national interest is frankly treasonous. Not to talk about treasonable felony. In other countries where they've had it with Trump in America, and they haven't been able to do something about Trump. So maybe I shouldn't be too hard on Nigeria, not being able to do something about its own version of Trump. But we need to wake up. Let's, to go back to why you brought me here this morning, we need to wake up. There is an existential threat to Nigeria. And we know where this threat is coming from. And we are being warned so that we don't wake up one morning and say, nobody told us. And I think that is the role of people like me who, I have nothing to gain. In fact, I'm so patriotic. I'm so loyal to Nigeria. But loyalty should not be defined in terms of support for the government of the day or support for a particular political party. I've gone beyond that. I'm 80 plus. I will be 81 in 3 months' time. So what do I have to gain by running down my country? But I'm not going to go silently into the night. I'm going to scream and scream. And I should thank Arise TV. I'm not being patronizing so you will invite me back. But I should thank you because I watch people on your program speaking the truth to power. That is your job, and that is now my own role in it. We shouldn't be afraid. The Americans, the British have taken the courage to to tell us what they have heard and what they have seen. And it's for us to package our own activities.
Prof, thank you very much.
Sure that we are not asleep.
Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us on the morning show.
Thank you, Dr. Abati.